Somebody has my daughter. Somebody in full camouflage got Holly. They grabbed her and took her to the woods. Please, get everybody out there.
Okay, they're on their way, sweetie. They're on their way right now.
On the morning of April 13th, 2011, Karen Bobo urgently called Decatur County 911, reporting that her daughter, Holly Bobo, had gone missing. What followed was the most extensive search operation in Tennessee's history. Despite a large-scale effort, Holly remained unaccounted for 2.5 years until her remains were eventually discovered.
He took her. He raped her. He killed her. He discarded her. He covered it up. He bragged about it. And he almost got away with it.
What happened to Holly Bobo? How could someone bring harm to an innocent young woman? Hello and welcome back. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. In today's episode, we're exploring a case filled with unexpected twists and turns, one that gripped an entire community, the disappearance of Holly Bobo. Without further ado, let's get started. The day everything changed. Holly Lynn Bobo was born on October 12, 1990, in Darden, Tennessee. Raised by her loving parents, Karen and Dana, alongside her brother Clint, Holly had a deep appreciation for the outdoors. She enjoyed fishing, hiking, swimming, and even hunting with her family. She was a bright student, known for her warm smile and kind heart. During high school, Holly caught the eye of Drew Scott, and the two shared a happy relationship. By the time she was 20 years old and studying nursing at the University of Tennessee, Holly and Drew were deeply in love. Holly's choice to pursue nursing reflected her compassionate nature. She had a special way of connecting with people, both young and old, and her soft Southern accent was a source of comfort to those around her. By 2011, her life seemed to be on the right track. She was excelling in school, surrounded by family and friends, and planning for a bright future. But everything took a tragic turn on April 13, 2011. That morning, Holly woke up around 4:30 a.m. to study for an upcoming exam. By 7:30 a.m., she received a phone call from her boyfriend, Drew Scott. At that time, her parents had already left for work, while her brother, Clint, was still asleep in his room. Just 12 minutes later, at 7:45 a.m., Holly made what would become her final phone call. Shortly after, a neighbor heard alarming sounds coming from her home. Concerned, they reached out to Holly's mother, Karen, to let her know something wasn't right. However, since Karen didn't have her phone with her at the time, the message was relayed to a school secretary instead. James Barnes, the neighbor.
About 7:50, sometime like that, I heard some arguing going on next door, so I kind of looked through the trees to see what was going on and couldn't see anything at all. And she started screaming a little, and then she quit.
You actually got a cold chill.
Oh yeah, my hair stood up everywhere, and I looked around, and every one of my dogs, they were on the ground, their ears were...
Meanwhile, at home, the family dogs began barking and growling, waking Clint from his sleep. Feeling curious and slightly concerned, he looked out the window and saw Holly near the garage, speaking with a man. Assuming it was Holly's boyfriend, Drew, he didn't think much of it at first.
Barking.
As I was approaching that window, I heard voices. I raised the blinds slightly, and I saw the silhouette of two individuals underneath that window knelt down. At first, I didn't recognize either voice, but as I listened for just seconds, I could recognize my sister's voice and what I thought was her boyfriend Drew's voice.
Holly and the man appeared to be having an intense conversation. She seemed visibly upset, while the man did most of the talking. Clint could only catch bits and pieces of their exchange. At one point, he heard Holly say, "No, why?" Believing she and her boyfriend were having a disagreement, Clint assumed it was a private matter and chose not to intervene. Meanwhile, Holly's mother, Karen, had received the concerning message about the distressing sounds. A sense of panic set in almost immediately. She quickly called home to check on Holly. When Clint mentioned that Holly was outside arguing with Drew, Karen's response sent a chill down his spine. "That's not Drew."
She said, "Oh my God, Clint, that's not Drew. Get a gun and shoot him."
Karen, growing more alarmed, urged Clint to grab a gun and stop the man. Still convinced it was Drew, Clint hesitated and asked, "You want me to shoot Drew?" Frustrated by the misunderstanding and fearing for Holly's safety, Karen hung up and immediately called the police.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes, I need to Cutter County 911.
This is him. What's wrong, dear?
Listen, 681 Swan Johnson Road. Somebody has my daughter. Somebody in full camouflage got Holly. They grabbed her and took her to the woods. Please, get everybody out there.
Okay, they're on their way, sweetie. They're on their way right now.
Tragically, Karen's call was routed to the wrong county, delaying the response and giving the suspect more time. When Clint looked out the window again, he saw Holly and the man walking away from the garage, heading toward the woods. It was then that he realized something was wrong. The man was much larger than Drew, and his movements seemed unusual. Growing more concerned, Clint tried calling Holly's phone, but she didn't answer. He also attempted to reach Drew, but there was no response. Determined to act, Clint grabbed a loaded pistol and ran outside. Near the garage, he discovered blood near Holly's car, a chilling sign that something was terribly wrong. At last, fully aware of the danger, Clint called 911 himself. Law enforcement arrived approximately 10 minutes later, but by then, Holly and the unknown man had disappeared into the dense woods, leaving behind only fear and unanswered questions. The $1 million search. Upon hearing the distressing news, Holly's father, Bobo, rushed home, only to find law enforcement already swarming the property.
The yard was full of people, cops and people, and I had to drive on past her. I was in a terrible big hurry, and I had to drive on past all that and go down on the side of the road where the county used to park their work equipment, and I had to park down there and run back to the house. First person I saw that I thought I needed to talk to was my son, Clint. Then I went inside and I found my pistol, and I come back outside with pistol.
The house was in chaos as local officers, FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and SWAT team members arrived. However, despite the urgency, no one immediately began searching for Holly. Authorities were waiting for a helicopter and search dogs to assist in the operation. Desperate for action, Karen Bobo pleaded with police to set up roadblocks, but her requests went unanswered. Meanwhile, the crime scene became increasingly crowded with people on foot, four-wheelers, and even horses. Many feared that crucial evidence, such as footprints or DNA, may have been unintentionally disturbed or lost. 2 hours later, law enforcement finally entered the woods near Holly's home to conduct a search, but they found nothing significant. Shifting their strategy, they requested her phone records and began tracking its GPS data. The results showed that Holly's phone had moved through the wooded area near her house, briefly stopping near Interstate 40 before doubling back toward its original location. Officers were dispatched to the area where the signal had paused, hoping for a breakthrough. However, the dense terrain showed no clear signs of recent disturbance, and no trace of Holly was found. It was a frustrating dead end.
They searched by ground, they searched by air, they searched within themselves.
I'm gonna let it shine.
We were looking for somebody that we weren't sure if we were ever going to find.
The investigation soon took an eerie turn when Holly's personal belongings began appearing in random locations throughout the town, almost as if someone was leaving them behind on purpose. Items such as her lunchbox, a receipt with her name on it, her school ID card, and even her cell phone and SIM card were discovered in various places, deepening the mystery. Back at Holly's house, investigators continued questioning the last known witness, her brother, Clint Bobo. He described the unidentified man as approximately 5'10" to 6 tall, weighing around 200 pounds, with dark hair and a deep, low voice. He also mentioned that the man was wearing a hat and mossy oak camouflage, a common outfit in their rural town full of hunters. Unfortunately, Clint couldn't recall any defining features of the man's face, making identification difficult. Then, to everyone's surprise, police asked Clint to remove his shirt. They wanted to check for scratches or any signs that he had been in the woods with Holly. Clint had unknowingly become the first suspect. Investigators questioned why he hadn't heard his sister scream despite being inside the house. Additionally, they noted inconsistencies in some of his statements. However, after further investigation, Clint was ruled out as a suspect. A few months later, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation shifted its focus to a man named Terry Britt, who had a troubling history. He was known for targeting blonde, blue-eyed women who resembled Holly. For weeks, law enforcement monitored Britt closely, wiretapping his phone, searching his property, and keeping him under surveillance. However, no evidence linked him to Holly's disappearance, and he was ultimately cleared as a suspect. Holly Bobo is found. 3 years later, in September 2014, a major breakthrough finally came. While searching for ginseng in the woods near Interstate 40, a group of hunters stumbled upon a human skull inside a large bucket.
In the ravine this way, and it was like somebody, hey, turn around, here I am. It remains that belongs to somebody that was loved, and you're sitting there looking at the ground, and you're seeing your daughter laying there in her place. It hits home.
Police rushed to the scene and discovered human bones scattered across the ground, including a skull, teeth, several ribs, and a shoulder blade. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the remains belonged to Holly Bobo. Her skull showed evidence of a gunshot wound, with the bullet entering from the right side, passing through the brain, and fracturing her left cheekbone as it exited. This single gunshot was determined to be the likely cause of death. At this point, law enforcement announced that they had identified a key suspect, someone they had been quietly investigating for at least 6 months. However, they believed this individual had not acted alone. In total, 6 other people were suspected of having connections to Holly's disappearance. The first arrests in the case came in March 2014, even before Holly's remains were found. Zach Adams, his brother Dylan Adams, and their associate Jason Autry were charged with aggravated kidnapping, first-degree murder, and other offenses. 3 additional men were later arrested for assisting in the disposal of evidence. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has never publicly disclosed the full details of what initially tied these men to the case. Whether this secrecy was to protect the integrity of the investigation or respect the privacy of those involved remains unclear. However, what is known is that Dylan Adams was arrested in 2014 on an unrelated weapons charge. During questioning, he made a startling confession. Dylan claimed that on April 13, 2011, he went to Zach's house to borrow a truck. While there, he saw Holly sitting in a green chair in the living room, wearing a pink t-shirt. She looked distressed. According to Dylan, Zach boasted about harming Holly and even claimed to have recorded it. Dylan also noted that Zach was wearing camouflage clothing that day. However, just 1 day later, Dylan recanted his confession, stating that police had pressured him into making those claims. Despite this, investigators considered his statement significant enough to move forward with arrests. A suspect takes his own life. Shane Austin, a key associate of Zach Adams, also became a person of interest. Phone records revealed multiple calls between him and Zach on the day of Holly's disappearance, leading investigators to suspect that Austin had helped dispose of her remains. Authorities offered Austin an immunity deal in exchange for information about Holly's whereabouts. However, when he failed to provide any useful details, the deal was revoked. Prosecutors accused Austin of being dishonest and uncooperative. In February 2015, Austin was found dead in a hotel room, having taken his own life. His attorney publicly criticized the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, arguing that Austin had been unfairly pressured. He stated, "He provided his full cooperation at every turn. This investigation was driven by speculation rather than solid evidence." In July 2014, 2 more individuals, Jeffrey Piercy and Mark Piercy, were arrested for tampering with evidence and being accessories after the fact. Authorities suspected that they had possession of a video related to the case and may have even shown it to others.
He told me that Mark had videoed Zach having sex with Holly Bobo.
Okay.
And his exact words after he told me that was, "He's a sick bastard." I seen a woman that was tied up that was crying.
All right, now let's talk about that. Did you recognize the woman?
She was blonde. Yes, it looked like Holly Bobo.
Jeffrey Piercy insisted that the allegations against him were a misunderstanding. He denied the existence of any video involving Holly Bobo and claimed that any mention of Holly had actually referred to his ex-wife, who shared the same first name. After analyzing more than 20 phones, investigators found no evidence of the alleged video. In August 2014, the state failed to transport Mark Piercy to court, delaying his hearing until September. However, just before the scheduled court date, prosecutors unexpectedly dropped the charges, citing his involvement in other criminal cases. Defense attorneys were outraged, accusing law enforcement of strategically adding and dropping charges to avoid presenting evidence in court. One attorney remarked, "If those reports are correct, it means they're just playing games. They charged him with a lesser crime to keep him detained, then dismissed it right before trial, only to charge him with a more serious offense elsewhere." Ultimately, all charges against Jeffrey and Mark Piercy were dismissed. However, things were different for Jason Autry, one of the primary suspects. Facing the reality of a lifetime in prison, Jason decided to cooperate with investigators. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he agreed to testify against Zach Adams. His testimony provided crucial insights into the case, breaking it wide open and sealing Zach Adams's fate. Zach Adams' trial. 2,343 days after Holly Bobo's disappearance in September 2017, the long-awaited trial of Zach Adams finally began. For Tennessee prosecutor Paul Hagerman, this was the first opportunity to present the full story of what had happened to Holly.
He took her. He raped her. He killed her. He discarded her. He covered it up. He bragged about it. And he almost got away with it. I couldn't have picked a prettier bitch. It was fun. The world may never know what happened to Holly Bobo.
However, the prosecution faced a major challenge. There was no DNA or forensic evidence directly linking Zach Adams to the crime. Instead, the case relied entirely on circumstantial evidence, witness testimonies, and Zach's own past behavior. Despite the lack of physical proof, the prosecution argued that the overwhelming amount of indirect evidence, combined with witness statements, painted a clear picture of Zach's involvement. Jason Autry's testimony played a crucial role in the trial, providing key details about what had allegedly happened to Holly.
No DNA, no fingerprints, a body that decomposed in the woods for years.
The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. We were feeding all of this information in, and we didn't realize what was there.
Zach Adams' attorney, Jennifer Thompson, presented a starkly different narrative to the jury, firmly asserting her client's innocence. She criticized the investigation as the most expensive in Tennessee's history, yet one that failed to produce any concrete evidence directly linking Adams to the crime. Thompson argued that without DNA, fingerprints, or any forensic proof, the prosecution's case relied purely on speculation and unreliable witness testimonies. She pointed out inconsistencies in the accounts provided by key witnesses, including Jason Autry, who had struck a deal to reduce his own sentence in exchange for testifying. According to the defense, this raised serious doubts about the credibility of his statements.
Had nothing. They had a great big goose egg. They paid all this money and they had absolutely nothing to.
The prosecution had a shocking revelation in store. Jason Autry, the alleged accomplice turned state witness, stunned the courtroom by pointing the finger at Holly's own brother, Clint Bobo. According to Jason's testimony, Clint had invited Zach, Dylan, and Jason over to his home to teach them how to cook methamphetamine. When Holly discovered what was happening, she allegedly confronted the group, demanding they leave. Fearing that her outburst would attract unwanted attention, the trio decided to abduct her. Jason claimed that Clint, too terrified to intervene, simply froze. He alleged that Clint finally found the courage to call 911 only after watching Jason drag Holly into the woods. However, Clint Bobo vehemently denied these allegations, and investigators found no evidence to support Jason's claims. Law enforcement never considered Clint a suspect, and his distress during Holly's disappearance was well documented. The most widely accepted version of events suggests that after Holly was abducted, she was taken to a remote barn where she was assaulted and lost consciousness. While the exact details of what happened remain unclear, evidence presented at trial suggested that Zach Adams later wrapped Holly's body in a carpet and placed it in the back of his truck.
He asked me would I help him bury the body, and I said yeah. As we got going down the road, I brought it to his attention that there were no shovels or pickaxes in the truck. How are we going to bury a body with no shovels or pickaxes? He looks at me and like he's lost. And I said, I don't know of nowhere a man can just pull up and get a shovels and pickaxes with a dead body in the vehicle. I told him that some years back that I had been underneath Interstate 40 bridge and there was a body floating. And I told him, I said, the only thing holding the body up was the intent.
Following Jason's account, the trio allegedly transported Holly to an area near the Interstate 40 bridge, intending to dispose of her body in the water. Their plan was to ensure there would be no trace of her left behind. However, what Jason said next left the entire courtroom in stunned silence.
I see the foot move, a movement, and a sound of distress that sound like, come out of the voice, come from the blanket. At that time, I walked to the door. I told him, I said, this fucking bitch is still alive.
Despite everything she had endured, Holly was still alive and fighting for her life. Jason described how, just as they were about to dispose of her, she suddenly began moving, her legs kicking in desperation. The courtroom fell silent as Jason recounted the moment. The trio had believed she was already gone, but Holly was still holding on. What happened next would determine her fate.
I told Zach, I said, she's heard my name called and heard me talking and all. At that time, he wheels around, walks back to the driver's side pickup, out of the floorboard of pickup, he pulls a pistol, the same pistol that was holstered on Mr. Austin's side at 30 Yellow Springs Road. I looked around and I told him that there was nothing coming close as clear, something to that effect. And at that time, boom, the gun sounded, the gun went off. And it sounded like to me that it shot 3 or 4 times underneath that bridge. I had done made it back. I had done started my way back this way. And it sounded like boom, boom, boom underneath that bridge. It was just one shot, but it echoed underneath that bridge all the way down that damn river bottom.
Autry claimed that after the shot was fired on that spring morning in 2011, they put Holly's body back in the truck, and Zach Adams dropped him off at his...
Without hesitation, Zach allegedly grabbed his pistol and fired a single shot to the back of Holly's head. Fearing the sound might attract attention, he quickly loaded her body back into the truck and drove off. Jason Autry claimed that Zach dropped him off before continuing alone, leaving the final fate of Holly's remains a mystery. The prosecution presented a key piece of evidence, a firearm believed to be linked to the crime. It was an Arminius HW5 .32 caliber Smith & Wesson long revolver, reportedly recovered from a body of water. A witness named Victor Dinsmore testified that Jason Autry had once traded this gun to him in exchange for drugs. After hearing about Holly's disappearance, Victor grew suspicious and feared the weapon might have been used in the crime. Panicked, he admitted to discarding it in a nearby creek. Further strengthening the case against Zach, his former girlfriend took the stand with damning testimony. She stated that Zach had openly confessed to the crime and even threatened to harm her in the same way if she ever spoke about it.
He would tie me up just like he did Holly Bobo, and nobody would ever see me.
Defense attorney Jennifer Thompson countered the prosecution's case by attacking the credibility of key witnesses. She pointed out that both Jason Autry and Zach's former girlfriend had a history of drug use, arguing that their accounts were unreliable. Additionally, she highlighted inconsistencies in their testimonies, making them the focal point of the defense's argument. The prosecution's strongest piece of evidence against Zach Adams was cell phone data. On the morning of Holly's abduction, cell tower pings indicated that Holly's phone and Zach's phone were in the same area, suggesting a connection between them. Furthermore, surveillance footage captured a white van, believed to belong to Zach, driving through the neighborhood that same day. However, Thompson was well prepared to challenge these claims. She accused law enforcement of misconduct, questioning why it had taken years to bring charges in such a high-profile case. Special Agent Brent Booth was forced to take the stand and acknowledge the delay, even apologizing for the slow progress of the investigation.
The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. We were feeding all of this information in, and we didn't realize what was there. Their alibis or their stories were not checked out.
Checked out. Was it a mistake?
Yes, it was a mistake.
Defense attorney Thompson didn't hold back, even questioning the integrity of Judge Creed McGinley himself. She accused him of showing bias, arguing that his comments during the proceedings suggested he had already decided Zach Adams was guilty. To make matters even more controversial, Judge McGinley admitted that he knew some of the jurors personally or casually. This revelation cast doubt on the trial's fairness, further fueling the defense's claims of misconduct. The courtroom became a battleground, with tensions running high and accusations flying from all sides. Finally, after 11 dramatic days of testimony, arguments, and intense debate, the jury reached a verdict.
All right, I'm going to start with count one, verdict form. First-degree felony murder of Holly Bobo during the perpetration of or attempt to perpetrate kidnapping of Holly Bobo. You checked guilty of first-degree felony murder of Holly Bobo during the perpetration of or attempt to perpetrate kidnapping of Holly.
Zach Adams was ultimately found guilty on all charges, including kidnapping, assault, and murder. The jury's verdict marked a significant moment of justice for Holly and her family. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never again harm anyone. In a powerful and emotional moment, Holly's mother, Karen, demanded that the brutal killer look her in the eyes. With all the strength and anguish a mother could hold, she forced Zach to face the consequences of his actions. It was a moment of painful closure, but one that brought a sense of justice for the life of Holly Bobo.
But I would like for Mr. Adams to look at me when I speak to him. I know that my daughter fought hard for her life. Can you back up just a little bit so he can look at me? And I know that she begged for her life because my daughter loved and enjoyed life. But you chose to take that from her. And you have shown absolutely, look at me please, you have shown absolutely no remorse for anything that you have done.
Zach Adams is currently serving his sentence at the Morgan County Correctional Complex, while his brother, Dylan Adams, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. Dylan received a sentence of 50 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Through an Alford plea, he did not admit guilt, but acknowledged that the prosecution's case was strong enough to secure a conviction. Jason Autry, who cooperated with authorities and testified against Zach, was spared significant prison time. He was released as a free man in September 2020. However, just 3 months later, Jason found himself back in prison on charges of firearm possession, drug possession, and evading arrest. In the aftermath of Holly Bobo's tragic death, her parents worked tirelessly to ensure that no other family would have to endure a similar tragedy. Their efforts resulted in the passing of the Holly Bobo Act, which raised the age for missing person alerts from 18 to 21. Governor Bill Lee signed the act into law on March 20, 2020. Additionally, In September 2020, a section of Highway 641 in Decatur County was named in Holly's honor. Despite the convictions, the full details of her abduction and death remain shrouded in mystery. The case was marked by conflicting statements, unverified claims, and rumors of misconduct. Some allege that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, leaked information or covered up evidence, leading to a scandal that caused the agency to temporarily withdraw from the case. They only returned once a new special prosecutor was appointed. What do you think? Do you believe the allegations of misconduct are true? Are Zach and Dylan Adams truly responsible for the tragic death of Holly Bobo? Why has no solid DNA evidence or trace of the crime been found linking them directly to it? Only time and the honesty of those involved may eventually shed light on the truth and offer the closure that Holly's family desperately needs. We'd love to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, let us know. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.